Good afternoon, Texas, Houston. Do you guys hear me clearly?
Yep.
Awesome. Okay. So first of all, I'm representing, of course, my wife, who's the better half, who runs much of the programming here. And when I told her that I'm going to be doing this event after Justin so kindly invited me, she told me, but make sure not to speak, amongst friends, amongst family and friends, stay away from controversy. Don't speak politics or religion. So I said, I'm just going to say hello and hang up with you guys. But Justin warned me not to take the date. He offered me several dates. He told me, don't take the date of elections or afterwards. But I must tell you, here we truly stand clear of any politics. We're, after all, in Mexico, which is a very generous country to its Jewish people, as is the United States. And I start out with that because you're going to be hearing of course, various sides and aspects and components of what takes place over here. But I want to say first and foremost, we are truly grateful. I mean, Mexico has been hosting Jewish people for well over 100 years as an established community, mostly in Mexico City. And for the last 14 years that we're here, but you'll hear a little bit as well about the origins of the first Jews of Cancun. And in fact, the first Jew who still lives here. But I want to start off with a mitzvah to combine this, of course, to make it a spiritual moment. And it's very apropos to the discussion we're going to have. So I want to start first. I'm going to take a little bit of charity. Of course, we use the peso over here, but the American dollar is still gold. So we're going to do tzedakah on behalf of our brothers and sisters, Jewish people and people, all of humanity. May Hashem grant us health, all that we need, especially in this particular time. I want to read for you, first of all, I'm here 14 years. We're here on a mission. The first Chabad center, perhaps it wasn't called that, was actually originated by our forefather Abraham and his wife Sarah, right? They put up a tent in the middle of the desert. They opened their doors and they began to welcome people and feed them. Again, I don't know if I'm having the same lamb menu that they offered in the desert, but that's essentially what a Chabad house is, a place to bring light, kindness, to humanity and to the Jewish people here. And I'll tell you how we try to do that, and we continue to try to do that. But I want to share with you a story that I believe will encapsulate our discussion of today. And this is about a young child, a young teenager, I should say, 14 years old. He lived in the city of Merida. Now, Cancun is very popular for its beaches, for its resort town. But Merida, which is 4 hours away from Cancun, is also under what we call our jurisdiction, our responsibility. There are Jews living there. There's no formal community. But we go there at various times to interact with the Jewish people that are there. So young Ricky is 14 years old, and he sends me an email. I never met him before. He introduces himself, and he says, I would like to convert to Judaism. And I was puzzled by his desire, because here's a young kid, what interaction may he have had, or what inspired him to want to convert to Judaism. So I began to explain to him, you're young, perhaps, I don't know if this is the path you really want in your life. What brought this desire upon you? So he began to, this is correspondence, an email. He tells me, look, I have a grandmother who lives in Argentina, in Buenos Aires, in a community in the neighborhood of Once, and she's Jewish. So I would like to join her faith. So I felt that very strange, because seemingly that may make him Jewish. So he begins to tell me his history, that his mother, when she left Argentina, she actually converted to Catholicism. Again, of course, a Jew could never really leave the Jewish faith, but at least from her perspective. And he, for some reason, feels a deep connection to Judaism. So I found that very interesting. So I asked him if I could send somebody to meet his grandmother to learn a little bit more about his family history. And that's what we did. I sent a rabbi in Argentina, a Chabad rabbi, went to visit her. And immediately upon meeting her, he was taken aback. She's speaking to him in Yiddish. She's a Holocaust survivor. And she lives in the neighborhood Once in Argentina. And her grandson is Ricky. So I reach out to Ricky. I say, by the way, your mother's Jewish, you're Jewish, and I would love to help you, advance your education. I asked him, did you have a bar mitzvah? Of course he did not. And we scheduled a bar mitzvah for him. It was in the beginning, it must have been November or beginning of December. This is about 12 years ago. And we're planning the big day. We began studying once or twice a week. We sent him a pair of tefillin. We never met yet. And we began our studies via Skype. It's, you remember Telegram? You remember, it was another form of communication before Zoom. And we began studying and preparing for the bar mitzvah. And I told him we're going to schedule a beautiful community bar mitzvah. There'll be many people participating in your honor. So we scheduled a date. Prior to him coming, I don't know if it was a week before or so, he says, I want you to know, my mother agreed to do the bar mitzvah, but she herself will not participate. She doesn't want to go to the synagogue. So, okay, I felt that it was a little uncomfortable, but I felt that as long as that she was giving her blessing for it and she's not opposed to it, I'm not creating any family friction, and we were able to do it. The mother comes that Friday afternoon. This is the Shabbos, Friday night. We're going to have a big dinner. Shabbat morning, they're going to come again. We're going to call him up to the Torah for his first aliyah to the Torah. Friday night, we had a beautiful dinner. The mother dropped off Ricky. She stayed in the car with her son. My wife went to the car and said, would you like to come and at least light Shabbos candles and, participate in the blessing? And she did. She agreed. She came out of the car and she lit Shabbat candles with my wife, took pictures. It was beautiful. We showed her the setup, but she felt that she does not want to participate. She went back to the car. All nice and fine. We had a beautiful dinner. That night, the mother picks up Ricky and they go to the hotel nearby that they were staying. The next morning, we were meant to meet, 8:30, and 9 o'clock, 9:30, 10 o'clock, Ricky has not arrived. My wife and I are a little concerned. We felt perhaps, we must have done something that agitated the mother and maybe she regrets. So we, we had to start services. We started services. We hoped Ricky would have come at least by the time of the Torah reading. And it's like, the wedding without the groom or bride. I mean, it's all set up. People are there. We actually, tried to ignite excitement within our community to say, here's a inspiring Jewish child on his own. He was 14 when he reached out to me. He's 15 now, is seeking a bar mitzvah, a connection, a bond to the Jewish people. I found it so inspiring. But yet he didn't show up, and we just think we took it in strides. We didn't know how to interpret it. Immediately when Shabbat ended, I picked up the phone and I called Ricky's number, but he doesn't respond. We called several times. We couldn't reach him. We emailed, and we figured, okay, this time we really ignited the wrath. And this is where it ends. But we tried. We really made an effort. Sunday morning, we start Hebrew school. I don't remember at that time, but probably around 9 o'clock. I remember we were getting ready. We had woken up. We were getting ready for Hebrew school. And I get a phone call from a blocked number on my cell phone. This is before we did not have smartphones back then. So I get a phone call. And a person begins screaming in Spanish, and I did not understand. It wasn't a very clear phone conversation. And I said, I'm sorry, I don't understand. And they make me wait a minute, and somebody gets on with a broken English and says, we have Ricky and his mother, and you need to wire us $15,000 if you want them back, in life. My heart dropped. I couldn't believe what I was hearing, and I did not know how to react. I said, hold on 1 minute, 15,000, it's a lot of money. I don't have that. What's going on? And they said very simply, we have Ricky and his mother and the brother. They're in our hands. I asked them, are they safe? And they said, yes. Can I speak to them? No, you cannot speak to them. And I did not know, we really didn't know what to do. I said, please, can I call you back in 10 minutes? They said, we will call you back. And they warned us, do not call the police, because if you will, this is where everything will end. I'm 26 years old. My wife is 24. And I was put in a position that perhaps I never was put before. And I'm somebody that did have the opportunity to travel, the world, Asia, Africa, Europe, and I was not prepared at 26 years old for this experience. and I was told I can't call anybody. I picked up the phone. I have an urgent number for the Israeli embassy, which we work very closely for security purposes. And I called the private number of the Israeli consul. I said, what should I do? He says, hold on. I'm going to get somebody from the federal police is going to call you from a special unit, which is the kidnapping unit, and they're going to contact you. And I, of course, explained to them that I'm petrified. I'm afraid what's happening. Anyway, so I hang up. 10 minutes later, I get back a call from the people. I said, look, I must speak with Ricky. I need to know that they're okay. I can't just send you money without knowing what's happening. So they said, wait. I waited 2 minutes. And I spoke with Ricky. I asked Ricky, are you safe? He says, yes. I asked him, where are you? He says, I have no idea. We're in a safe house. We're safe. They're feeding us. They're taking care of us. But we're stuck here. The person gets back on the phone and he starts shouting that at a certain time, I must have the money in 2-3 hours. I said, look, banks are closed on Sunday. I need to put together the money. Please give me a little bit more time. Could we, could I get a discount? To try to resolve this issue. I'll tell you, in Chabad Rabbinical School, they did not teach us the art of negotiations, but you learn on the job. And I said, look, I might have $5,000. Would I be able to do 5,000? So he said, yes, if you $5,000, you can wire it and we'll release them. So I said, okay, give me an hour. So we hang up the phone. A few minutes later, I get a call from the police department in Mexico City, Special Victims Unit. And of course, I'm petrified. And the first thing they tell me, I tell them the narrative, what took place on the phone calls. And they tell me, listen, very likely your friend is not kidnapped at all. I said, what does that mean? I spoke to him on the phone. He said like this, he said, these people that spoke to you claim to be a certain group that was very popular then here called the Zetas. They are most likely not the Zetas. He says, we got to take all precautions, but their chances are they're not the Zetas. I said, how do you know? He said, because the Zetas don't negotiate. When they tell you an amount, you need to give them the amount, and that's where it ends. And they said that this is what's called a virtual kidnapping, which I later would learn is unfortunately a lot more common and happened several times since then. But now I finally understood, the situation we're in. We live in a dual universe. On one hand, you have the beautiful sandy beaches of Cancun, the beautiful hotels that look like Collins Avenue in Miami or in Los Angeles. But then there's an element here that, unfortunately, in my time here, I had to interact with many, many times. Now, as things progressed, it was about 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock. I got a call from Ricky. He says, we're safe. I'm out. I'm on the way back to Merida. We're leaving Mexico. I'll call you when I'm in Merida when we feel safe. Anyway, actually what happened was he got a call in the hotel. He wasn't staying in one of the classic brand name hotels. And they got a call Friday night. They got a call at 2 a.m. And somebody on the phone said, I know your name. I know your room number. You're going to follow orders exactly as we tell it to you. And if not, don't turn back. And of course, there'll be consequences. And they told him, go downstairs. There's a car waiting for you, in front of the hotel. Now, of course, this was coordination between somebody working in the hotel that knew that there was a foreigner there. Long story short, this was a virtual kidnapping, but they did actually have possession of Ricky and his mother. And they ultimately did get a large sum of money, in order to get them released. But ultimately, they would have not had to have done that. But again, I bring out this story just to show the dual, like I said, the dual experience of living in Mexico. And the Jewish people here, of course, are already more accustomed and familiar with, sometimes you could even see in the street the type of people that you need to stay away from. In my early days that I was here, so, we got access to a pickup truck. Because a pickup truck is it's great for a Chabad rabbi. You put the sukkah on there on Sukkot, you put a menorah on there on Hanukkah, and it's a traveling mitzvah mobile. Somebody once told me, he said, by the way, that kind of truck you're driving is associated with different groups of people here that you don't want tailing your truck. And therefore, you should probably change the model, Again, so who are the Jews that live in Cancun? How many? How long have they been here for? And I must tell you, our relationship with Ricky grew, and his mother, he went to university in Arizona, and incredible journey he had in furtherance of his Yiddishkeit, his Judaism, and experience from there and on. But yet we did not have the opportunity to give him that first aliyah, to be called up to the Torah. That had to wait till he moved to Arizona. Cancun is celebrating its 50th anniversary this year. Cancun was once a small fishing village, a little bit before my time. My wife and I moved here 14 years ago. Actually, the period of time that we moved here, so the first time we came here actually was in the winter. Oh, it was gorgeous. We were coming from a snowy winter in New York, and we arrived to Cancun, and wow, beautiful. You leave your coat in the room, and you walk outside. How refreshing that was. I'll never forget. The first day we were there, we went to the popular and largest mall in the area, shopping mall. It's called La Isla. Today it's famous. It has the Ferris wheel there. We also have a very large Hanukkah menorah there, and we gather hundreds and sometimes thousands of people there at the Hanukkah experience. Although, unfortunately, this year, of course, will be different. We went there. My wife and I arrived from New York. We loved it, of course. What's not to like? When you come here, I don't know, in December. And the first thing we did, we went to La Isla Mall. We said, we're going to, we got to find the Jews. And we started going store to store, asking, are you Jewish? Do you know any Jewish people? And we met with a woman. Her name is Martha. May she live and be well. We're very close. She still lives here. She was then a realtor. It's always a good person to know, right? Who's buying real estate? What is the statistics? And we met her, and we started to speak, and she began to cry. She said she's been disconnected for many years, and she was so happy we were there. We didn't tell her, we weren't even sure yet if we were actually going to move down to Cancun. And after that, we met a French Jewish family from the city of Lyon that also owned a store in the mall. And we met with them. That was the first 2 Jewish people that we were able to put tefillin with. So with Martha, we were able to study together, and we discussed the Parsha, and we just chatted and schmoozed. And then we went downstairs to the store right near the Apple store, and we were able to meet a wonderful Jewish family who till today has a very close relationship with us. One of the children live in Israel, etc. And that's how we began to meet, one Jew and then another. It's like searching for chametz on Passover. Prior to Passover, it's not like Brooklyn, New York, or Jerusalem, or perhaps even Houston of today. We had to really seek and find one Jew who knows perhaps another Jew and another Jew. I want to share with you a few interesting encounters that took place that I appreciate that Justin invited me here, because it brought me back those memories, and it also brought me back to thinking why we are here. I met this Jew. His name is Alex, a very, very dear friend of mine today. And he was very skeptical when he met us the first time. He was surprised that the Hasidic garb didn't adjust, to beach clothing, You would think, I do remember the day I took all my shirts. It was in August, because we ultimately moved here in August, which is approximately the same time as the anniversary of passing of the Lubavitcher Rebbe. And we wanted it to coincide, as we are emissaries of the Rebbe. So we wanted to dedicate it to the Rebbe's yahrzeit, to the yahrzeit, the day of passing of the Lubavitcher Rebbe. And I remember when I arrived in August, wow, the heat, the humidity. I mean, Houston, but I could tell you I was not prepared, and I've yet to adjust to that. And so I met Alex, and Alex told me something very wise. He said, Mendel, I want you to know that every Jew, and he said this truthfully, he said this about every person that's in Cancun. But again, you have to remember, Cancun 14 years ago is not necessarily the Cancun of today. He said every Jew that's in Cancun ran away from something. Nobody just moves to Cancun. You visit Cancun, you experience Cancun, but you don't live in Cancun. It wasn't the city. There's no culture. There's no, again, back then, a lot has changed and grown, and we've seen a lot of great positive changes. So I turned to Alex and I said, everyone who's here is running away from something. May I ask, what are you running away from? And he tells me, he says, don't, in due time, you'll know. And soon after, I remember this was in front of Galenia Hospital, which we visit almost on a weekly basis, because Cancun does not have like a Jewish federation or organizations. So we need to be, the Chevra Kadisha, we need to be the Bikur Cholim. When somebody, there's not a week that goes by that we don't get a phone call of an emergency. Sometimes it's something small, a child that was injured that needs help. Sometimes it's something much bigger. We had last year, we had a child from Australia, a family in Australia that we got to know very well. There was a head injury and the family had to be here an extended period of time. And we became very close to the family. But again, there's no, you're coming to a foreign country. So as long as you're in your hotel and enjoying the experience, that's fine. But if God forbid there's a boating accident, a drowning, or somebody gets hurt, or like last week, somebody fell and broke their leg, oftentimes the first call will be to Chabad. And we had to become more acquainted with the hospitals here, the medical centers, the prisons here, which we have to visit, unfortunately, from time to time. We actually have currently a family here that's stuck here for another reason, which interestingly, so we hosted them for Shabbat last week. And one of the things they told me that their first interaction with Chabad in the States was actually in Houston. The father was an MD Anderson a number of years ago and needed help. So I'm sure you guys are also very familiar and your community has all these type of programming. But over here we had to start this type of services that every Jewish community has and hopefully does not need. But the circumstances require it. So we were in front of Galenia Hospital, which is one of the private hospitals here. And we met a woman. Her name is Sarah, still lives here with her husband. Wonderful, wonderful people. And she told me, said, look, I'm very happy you came here. But honestly, nobody moved to Cancun seeking a synagogue or a Jewish experience. For that, we would have moved to the States, we would have moved to New York, we would have stayed in Mexico City. That's not why we moved to Cancun. And she told me something interesting. I'll never forget it because of how it coincided with what I'll share with you. She said, if you think you're going to start a Jewish community here, maybe you'll have 5 people. You're never going to have more than 7 people. So I don't know if this is the place you want to waste your time. This is what she told us. In all honesty, she was being very kind to us. And I must tell you, I became very skeptical as I did not know at the time, are there Jewish people in Cancun? Are there enough to keep us busy and active? And, ultimately, will we prevail? Or are we, that was in November or December. We moved in August. Around Hanukkah time was the first time that she came with her husband to join us for a Shabbat meal, for Shabbat services and dinner. There was probably around 40, 50 people. I remember her walking in, she almost fell off her feet. What's interesting is that Shabbos would have not been very eventful. But Sunday or Monday morning, I get a call from the New York Times. And they asked me, are you Mendel Truk? I said, yes. How do you spell your name? So I gave them the spelling of my name. I asked them, do you want it in Hebrew or in English? They said the Hebrew edition of the New York Times hasn't come out yet. But I gave them then they started asking me details, how long you were there. And it was strange to me. I did not know. And they said that we're just going to be writing something up about Cancun. I don't remember, maybe it was the next Sunday, the travel writer of the New York Times wrote a beautiful write-up, Matt Gross, where he says that he spent Friday night at Chabad. And I'm going to read to you one of the things he wrote. Again, I obviously met him, but I did not know who he was. He did not introduce himself. He writes the following, amongst what he wrote. Where is that? So Matt Gross writes the following. Yes, in sultry, sinful Cancun, I was spending my Friday night at Chabad House, the outreach center of the Lubavitchers, the Hasidic Jewish sect. But why had I, a long-lapsed Jew, chosen the Shabbat, etc. And he continues his discussion. And I want to tell you something that really put in perspective to me and my wife one of the great opportunities we have here that perhaps we wouldn't have anywhere else so easily. Cancun is one of those places, and it's not just Cancun. Oftentimes when people leave their surroundings, their setting, like God gave Abraham the first interaction, the first command God gives Abraham in last week's Torah portion is, go, leave your father's home, leave your homeland, what is that? It's like leave your boundaries, leave your limitations. And why is that necessary in order to, create what we know today as the founding of the Jewish nation and monotheism, etc.? It's because oftentimes when a person is within his own boundaries, he has so much that's holding him back, enabling him, which would enable him to be more interactive or to, take away those whatever negative connotations a person may have, or things that in general would hold back someone from, sharing himself, his essence, his soul with somebody else. So I found something unique. I mean, we realized that we have an opportunity here. People are so less judgmental of others in Cancun and many places, like this, when people are outside of their, surroundings. And I see this every single day by the type of people that come through our center. Our Chabad Center today is in the center of the Cancun hotel zone. And literally we have Jews from every walk of life coming through our doors. And then those people that we meet in the mall. I must tell you the amount of times I meet a Jew, in the public mall, and I say, would you like to have Shabbat candles? Would you like to put on tefillin? That many of them will tell me it's their first time, or they would have never done this, in the place of, living where they live. But over here, for some reason, they felt more comfortable. Their guard is down. On an average Shabbat over here, and what's interesting is there's a PhD, a thesis that was written on our Chabad Center a number of years ago by a non-Jewish student. It's a whole discussion how it came about, but we met this woman that moved here, and for some reason she wanted to visit Chabad. She came for a Friday night dinner, and she was truly inspired, and I'll tell you what she was inspired about. And she wrote a lengthy study. She asked me if she could spend more time at Chabad. She spent, must have been a couple of months where she came almost every day to Chabad, watching the classes, the Hebrew school, the kindergarten, my wife's classes. She came to the women's programs. She came to our teenagers programs. And she even joined me to visit sick people in the hospitals. And she wrote this beautiful study, which I have today. And one of the things she pointed out is how incredible it is that she cannot conceive thinking that this would exist amongst any other people, where you can have on a Friday night at Chabad, you can have 50 people, 100 people, sometimes 200 people from literally every background and walk of life and different languages. There are times you can have a Chabad, an average Shabbat, even a Shabbat like this, which we are social distancing, and we are far fewer people than normal. We probably had 7-8 countries. We had Argentina, we had Brazil, we had the United States, we had Israel, we had Venezuela, we had French. My point is that she was fascinated by the idea, what do all these people from so many different backgrounds and cultures and different levels of observance have in common that they want to spend an evening together? And I must tell you, oftentimes, the Baal Shem Tov taught, the founder of the Hasidic movement, that everything a person sees or hears has to teach us a lesson in serving God and in our improvement of interaction amongst people. And so often, I learned so much from the people around me, from the experiences of other people, but she opened my eyes to this. And I get the privilege of seeing it every single day. And not always is it monumental, what we would call monumental mitzvahs. Sometimes it's just a good morning, a hi. I'll share with you a story that happened approximately 2 years ago. I see there's some questions. In a moment, I'm going to share the story and I'm going to start answering questions. My apologies. We had here a young student that was in a boating accident. I got the call, had to rush to the hospital. And we came there. First, he was in a horrible hospital. We had to move him to a private clinic. Long story, this young man desperately needed blood. So we sent out an email asking people to donate blood. Then we realized that the situation was very dire. The doctor said that they have no choice. They have to amputate his legs. The parents don't live in this country. It's very difficult to help parents from afar make decisions. There's a lot of responsibility. There's financial components to it. It was a very difficult situation. So the story is as follows. We decided, again, upon consultation with doctors in the United States, I reached out to an organization in New York. They got in touch with some top doctors in this field, and they said urgently to move this individual to the United States, to New York, to a hospital in Long Island. It slipped my mind for a moment. It's near Islip Airport. Anyway, so now you're talking about a cost of $30,000. How do you move it? And the family, unfortunately, did not have insurance to cover this. Long story short, so we worked with an organization in New York, and were able to get to move him to New York. Again, we had to. Everybody participated in the cost. Many people came together to help, including some of my local Jewish friends here in my community that participated. Some doctors, and they all helped in one way or another because there's a lot of components. And we medevac, at least 4 or 5 times a year for urgent matters. But this was very unique. Anyway, long story short, he's moved to New York. They did a surgery on him. He had to go through 8 months of rehabilitation. And Baruch Hashem, he's doing much better. Thank God. He danced with us last Simchas Torah in Chabad. I can't say fully recovered, but he was dancing. He wasn't well enough to hold the Torah, but with the feet that the doctors here said would have to be removed. Now, all this is nice and fine, but what was interesting is we have here a member of our community who is the Russian consul of for the Russian embassy. She's a Jewish woman, lives here many years, a very dear friend of ours. She was there Simchas Torah with us, and she said the following, and she was crying. She said with tears in her eyes, she says, "You don't understand how lucky we are as a people. You can't imagine." She says, "I have a situation where a Russian citizen was shot, unfortunately, and is dying in the hospital. I post on Facebook asking, please, if there's any Russian citizens that want to come give blood, if anybody wants to come visit." I said, unfortunately, people don't, people are on vacation. People don't have, whatever, they're distracted, let's just say. And she said she's so amazed how many people came together to help and to, participate in this chesed and this kindness to help this young man get back on his feet. That's something truly beautiful. And the truth is we're here as Jewish people to shine light within our communities and without. We have to be a walking Kiddush Hashem, a divine light and spark for all the nations of the world. And in a moment, I'll share a little bit of our interaction also with the beautiful Gentiles that live here. And let's see, let's get some questions. Okay. Is it possible? Oh, okay, sorry. Okay, Spanish, good question. I'm glad you're not testing me on my Spanish. My Yiddish is better than my Spanish. My wife speaks a perfectly fluent Spanish. What's interesting is the common language here is English. Now, that may not be so true in the streets necessarily, but the only common language, when you have Jewish people from 10, 20 different countries, no matter where they're from, oftentimes English is the language that you could communicate with. While there are many that know Hebrew, for example, but Hebrew is certainly less, less familiar to many of the Jewish people. So English is often the common language, and that's the language that we really operate most of our activities. How do you prepare for Shabbat? Okay, that's a very good question. It's a question that we struggled with for several years. We did not know. Ultimately, we learned seasons, and we also know the seasons that the people that reserve and let us know they're coming. And then the seasons, for example, spring break, we know we need to prepare for many meals for people that don't necessarily reserve. They're young kids, they just come on the whim. So there are seasons we know, like, in January, December, January, you need to prepare for 150, 200 people. Again, if there's groups coming, then you'll know there'll be more. Better be over prepared than under prepared. And because really, I do call it the highlight of the week. But I must tell you, although, we have Passover Seder's with 500, 600 people. But I must tell you, never to underestimate the value of the one-on-one interaction. And I learned that, I'll never forget, it was our first Passover Seder. And we were getting many Israeli backpackers then. First of all, I see a question, do you get 10 people for a service? Yes, we do. Like this week, Shabbat, we did have. We get now far less than usual, but we still do get. And I actually discourage people from coming, especially if there's any concern that they may have medically. At this point, I don't encourage people to come. People that come, as long as we're socially distancing, we are continuing services. For example, now my wife's programming is mostly done outdoors. So for example, we have beautiful kids programming, and we do that outdoors and with masks, so everybody feels comfortable and safe. There are right now 3 kosher restaurants in Cancun, correct. First time when we moved here, it was difficult to find anything kosher in Walmart and even in Costco. Today, you could find an abundance of kosher products, and we make a great effort to try to increase that. We used to go to Costco in our early days, my wife and I, we used to meet the management and explain to them how important it is, that they should bring kosher products. And they would ask us, how many people are you? We had to use the Jewish proverb. It's not how many people are we, but rather how much we eat. And us Jews, we eat a lot, But thank God, there's really quite a bit of kosher food. Permanently, there are about 250 to 300 Jews living here. That's men, women, and children. You have, in the winter, that number increases a lot because there are people that have second homes here. That's also a very important part of our work here, because we interact with a lot of people that don't generally go to shul or synagogue in their hometown, but yet over here, for some reason, they do feel a greater comfort level. And, like I said, nobody's walking around here with a suit and tie. I think I was the first one to wear the tie here and then take it off a couple of weeks later, and it's still in my closet. How is COVID affecting the community? And I'm sorry, I'm not mentioning the names, but I'm so happy to see the interaction. Good question. Okay, tough question. For a while, in the beginning, it was very difficult here. First of all, we closed down completely. The hotels closed down. Unfortunately, there are many people here that are desperate to make, in order to make ends meet, they need the little bit of money they make, from the hotels. Actually, I felt people were asking me when we closed down, so we have people that are employed by Chabad, helpers and chefs. And the first thing I did, I told the accountant that we need to give money to every single person because they're going to be out of work for a while. And the first thing they were telling me is that legally you don't have to do that. But what's really on my mind is that from the Jewish perspective, we do have an obligation to care for those, less fortunate. And these people were, especially those who were employed by us, are really devoted and dedicated to us. Those that are employed by us locally. And we definitely wanted, Baruch, thank God we were able to bring some of them back to work. But the hospitals were full. I'm constantly in contact with doctors.